Great morning to everyone. This is Dr. Mack Crayton III, Ph.D. And it is April 6th, 2022. So great Wednesday morning to you. Thank you for joining me on this morning for another discussion of the interface. This is discussion number 6. And today we are discussing the phenomenon of God dividing the waters from the waters. Wow. Okay. So we are coming from my book this time, Evolution of Creation, the interface between science and scripture. You can get the books on my website at CraytonServicesLLC.com. Evolution of Creation is the most recent book. And the first book was Brain, Mind, Soul, and Spirit, the interface between science and scripture. Again, CraytonServicesLLC.com. If you are in love with your your Amazon Prime account, you can get the books on Amazon.com as well. Just go to the search window on Amazon and key in my name, and both books will come up. So I would love your support. If you purchase it on my website, it'll come from me. I'll ship it directly to you, and I'll autograph it before sending it to you. If you purchase it on Amazon, it's coming directly from Amazon. Just before I get started, I do want to send a shout out to Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you for the warm reception and the great turnout on Saturday, April 2nd at the Urban Reader Bookstore. A great shout out and thank you to the owner of Urban Reader Books, Miss Sonia Spencer. A phenomenal bookstore and a phenomenal person. So God continue to bless you. Again, another shout out to all of the other authors who were present as well and presented their books. And I pray God's blessings upon you and much success with your books. So thank you, Charlotte. And I would be remiss also not to mention the TD Jakes Leadership Summit that New Beginnings, my church as well. There were 14 of us from New Beginnings who traveled to North Carolina to attend the summit, and what a phenomenal meeting and conference that was. I was inspired, I was motivated, I was spiritually awakened. So I am extremely grateful to have attended the Leadership Summit. So we're going to jump in because remember, we only have 15 minutes and I know you are trying to brush your teeth and get dressed and iron your clothes and get ready for work. Some of you are already in your vehicles and traveling to work, so drive carefully as you're listening to me. Don't look at me, don't look at the screen, just listen and keep your eyes on the road. Okay, so we are coming today on in Genesis chapter 1, and verses 6 through 8. Genesis chapter 1, 6 through 8. I'm going to read it to you. It's in my book. I have the actual scriptures in the book. And but if you haven't gotten your copy of the book yet, meaning that you're in process of getting it, right? You can find it in chapter 2, okay, of the book. And so I'll read it to you as we go forth, okay? So Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. So here we see God forming the firmament, and the firmament he called heaven. And clearly the scripture says there is water below the firmament and then waters above the firmament. And so I'm like, water, sky, or heaven. And in this particular case, the heaven is referred to as the sky. There are 3 realms of heaven. And in this particular reference to heaven is referring to the first realm of heaven, which will be the area, the 12 miles between the surface of the earth up into space. And that's where we will see the clouds, we will see birds flying, airplanes will travel and fly in that particular area. The second realm of heaven, whenever that's referred, is referring to outer space, or what we think of as outer space, where the planets, the moons, and stars and sun would be located. And then the third realm of heaven would be the heaven of heavens, which is the home of God. And so, in this particular reference of the heavens, we see that there's water above and water below the sky. So I'm like, I didn't have any science classes that talked about there's water above the sky. So I was pretty confused by this scripture when I began writing the book and trying to understand what is it that God is saying here. So ironically, what helped me to better understand biblical scripture was science. And thus the tagline, right? Using science to better understand scripture. So I then had to go to science and think about, well, how is water divided in science? So water has three different states, and we can consider those states as the division of water. One, we know liquid water. Okay, so water can exist as a liquid. Water can exist as a gas also, so as vapor, as humidity, as steam. So we have water in a second property, so separated or divided from its liquid state into a gaseous state. Third, water can exist as a solid, so a liquid, a gas, and a solid. Water is a solid when it's ice, when it's frozen. So we have water in three different states of matter, okay? And so we can divide water into its three different states. So as I was reading and studying, as I was preparing the book, or writing the book, I ran across an article that was published by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And that was in 2005. It was released. And the title of the article said, "The solar system and beyond are awash in water," mean covered in water. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see an interface here. So I'll read an excerpt from that article for you so you can hear what NASA had to say about water being throughout our solar system. And it reads, the chemical elements in water, hydrogen, oxygen. We talked about that before, right? When we talked about that verse 2, where God's Spirit moved up on the waters, and water being made up of the elements hydrogen and oxygen, and then they are joined together by chemical bonds. So we show that chemistry and science were present in the beginning, right when we introduced the Spirit of God in the very second scripture of the Bible, Genesis 1, verse 2. Okay, so here again, NASA is saying the chemical elements in water, hydrogen and oxygen, are some of the most abundant elements in the universe. Astronomers see the signature of water in giant molecular clouds between the stars, in disk of materials that represent newborn planets, and in the atmosphere of giant planets orbiting other stars. There are several worlds thought to possess liquid water beneath their surfaces, and many more that have water in the form of ice or vapor. Water is found in primitive bodies like comets and asteroids, and dwarf planets like Ceres. The atmospheres and interiors of the four giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are thought to contain enormous quantities of the wet stuff, and their moons and rings have substantial water ice. So here we're seeing that our entire universe has water. And so when I began to going back to the scripture to say, well, God divided the waters below the firmament, I was okay with that because we know that earth has liquid waters in the forms of oceans, rivers, streams, and so forth. But the water above, even though I'm in science, I just didn't think about the three divisions of water in science as a liquid, a solid, and a gas. So here, God, rather than doing the biblical dividing the waters like dividing the Red Sea, God was doing the chemistry division of water into its three states of matter. So that gave me greater appreciation and understanding of the biblical scripture by infusing science. And that's our tag. Understand using science to better understand biblical scripture. So that's our interface for the morning. Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday morning, April 6th. And I'm also excited by the countdown. I have 4 more days to my birthday, April 10th. I'll be celebrating 57 or starting chapter 57. So I am grateful and thankful for God for bringing me this far along my journey. So as you go about your day, remember to share the love of Christ with someone. And I thank you for the privilege of your time on this morning. Be sure to tag and share the message, and so that others can join us on Wednesday mornings, or even they can go back and listen to the replay. Again, this was discussion number 6. So scroll up and down my timeline to find the other 5 to tune in to make sure you're caught up with us. It is April 6th, and this is discussion number 6. Dividing the water, God dividing the waters from the waters. Have a wonderful day and be blessed.